to our, we've moved on, because of our time, we won't have time for questions on this one, but we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is Mark East. And Mark East is joining us. He is the Worldwide General Manager for Education from Microsoft. And Mark, let's see if we are ready. Yes, here's Mark. We're very excited for his presentation about how technology bridges the gap. We talked a little bit about that already, and let's see a little bit more through the lens of Microsoft. So thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Hopefully you can see my slides here.
Yes, if you just make them big at the bottom, that's it. Great, perfect.
Okay, great. Well, it's really good to be with you. It's quite late here in Dubai for me, but hopefully I'll be motivated and enthusiastic in my usual way. I wanted to call this short presentation Build Back Better. I know it's a terminology that's already used by Joe Biden and Boris Johnson. I think Boris Johnson probably would claim he thought of it first, but it does really, I think, adequately summarize what we have to do in education after the pandemic. Now, I've been in technology now education technology now for 40 years, and this slide probably does pretty much articulate how I've seen things. Now, I've got my own personal views of why this might be, that education's always been following technology, but because of the interest of time, I won't share them with you today. I will, however, talk to you about looking at the different sectors and trying to understand it. So if we were to look at financial sector, they have hardware support. Anyone working in finance, they get software support. They have typically systems administrators. They have help desk when they need it. There's infrastructure support if the Wi-Fi isn't working. You know, they typically have a good deal of technology support. And then if we look at what typically happens in schools, the teacher is very much the IT department. They may have one or two teachers that understand technology, but typically we're expecting our teachers to be technology gurus, to manage all of the hardware, manage all of the software updates, and at the same time learn how to use technology effectively in teaching and learning. So how do we really bridge this gap? And I think it's going to be a combination of two things. First of all, new technology. And secondly, new mindset by the leaderships, both at government level and school leadership, in how we effectively empower these teachers to use technology effectively and efficiently to improve student learning outcomes. Now, I just want to give you a few examples of how technology really helps. So first of all, with teachers, obviously there's a huge time efficiency using technology. I'm going to cover that a little bit later. But one thing I found that is particularly a fantastic opportunity is in-service teaching. So where you have teachers out in the schools, how do you maintain their levels of professional proficiency? How do you train them, for example, on how they could be managing a disruptive student in a class? It's not just about technology training, it's training and updates and information all of the time. If they have the technology, you could certainly use the technology for training to all of the teachers in a country effectively. What about students? Well, when I was a student, I think certainly I didn't have a computer at the time, and in fact I did have textbooks and I had a small library in my school, but that was the restriction of content that I had. I couldn't contact a teacher, an expert in the world, and get them to provide a lesson. And by the way, that lesson could be to hundreds of thousands of students all at one time, so you have economies of scale there. I couldn't do any of that. So students really have fantastic opportunity. Policymakers, well, one of the biggest challenges I've always found when I've worked with governments is they said to us, well, demonstrate to us that there is student learning outcomes through the investment of technology. And it's always been very difficult to do, because to do that scientifically, you would have to deny students from technology and then provide students with technology and then measure that outcome. So you can't really do that. However, with cloud technology now, this collection of data has become much, much easier to do. And we can actually provide real-time feedback both to parents and policymakers and teachers, and very, very quickly. And with parents, well, one of the key things is, how do you get more involved in your children's learning? I mean, one of the big frustrations for me with all of my three children was, I didn't really know what they were working on at any one particular time. Unless I went to a parents' evening at the school and they told me what, typically looking back on what they've done, I would love to have known what they were focused on at that particular moment. So in the times that I did spend with them, I could actually help. But of course, we couldn't do that. But technology allows that. So we've just gone through, this is Satya Nadella, our chief executive, and he would say that we've just seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. When we first started out, all of the speakers before me have talked about this dramatic use of technology. It's basically because there was no other choice. I remember I was at University College Cork about a month ago, and the vice provost there said to me, look, really, Microsoft Office and 365 and Teams has saved us. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have been able to survive. And he said when the pandemic struck and they had to shut the university down, he said he had 1,200 members of his staff in a meeting the very next day using this type of technology. So we know that really it's helped save many education institutions, but at the same time that it's been very, very dramatic in terms of technology usage. And the interesting thing is, we believe that we're going to see even faster technology innovation in the next 10 years than we saw in the last 40. So this technology innovation is just going to keep on accelerating. This was a report from the World Economic Forum, and basically, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but it basically says, look, there's no going back. The bubble has burst. We know now that we can use technology very effectively, not just within learning, but also in the work environment. It's been proven. We can do it. We can use technology. This is more of an education focus, and it talks about how really for a lot of teachers and students, really they've been working within these what we call squares on the screen. They've been watching their computer, having lessons, and during that time, we know that, as has been said by many of the other speakers, that we've witnessed a real great loss in learning. In fact, 97% of all teachers that were surveyed said that they'd seen a loss in learning. And the important thing is that 70% of those teachers felt that they were really concerned that they didn't really have the skills to deliver high value learning using technology. That was a big concern of theirs. They weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for the change. They had the technology in a lot of cases, but they didn't really feel they were being very effective with it, other than just talking into their computer screen. And at the same time, they all believed that through the pandemic, they've seen that the future of using technology, 85% have seen that they can actually really start using technology in a much greater way. And only 7% of the students said that they felt that it really didn't benefit, that technology is not going to benefit them. So I think we have a changing mindset now within the teacher community that technology is important and it can be adequately used going forward, even as hopefully we actually reduce the infection rates of COVID around the world. Now, most of you we've been using Teams actually on this call today, on this presentation. And one of the key things is that these 4 squares on a screen can become quite tiring, especially if, like me, you do about 15 of these calls a day. But the great thing is we're bringing new technology all the time. This is this fast pace of innovation I was talking about earlier, and we are bringing avatars to Teams. And in fact, the avatars will be with us within the next few months. And you can then start doing some really interesting things. So first of all, you don't have to appear on the screen. Your avatar can appear on the screen. Your camera you can be doing other things around the office, and it's your avatar that's actually in the Teams meeting. You can create these virtual areas. So here you could see sort of bottom left on the screen, students meeting in a virtual area within a campus or in a school. You could actually have a virtual classroom that you could build, and all of the students' avatars could be in the classroom. So effectively then, with wearables, you could be turning to your right and see your best friend sitting next to you at your desk. Or teachers could actually be using whiteboarding virtually, as you can see here with the avatar. So there is a greater richness coming to hybrid learning or remote learning in the future, which hopefully would take away some of that fatigue that we often get just by looking at the screens and presenting PowerPoint slides. This is an interesting survey that came from Stanford University, where they were looking at the fact that reading fluency in early grades were 30% lower. I think this supports what's already been said before. I just want to give you an example of how technology can help here. So a teacher typically, when they're checking reading progress of a student, will have a stopwatch, and then they will pass a piece of text to a student and ask them to read it. They start the stopwatch and they time them. They time them on the speed, they time them on accuracy, that they're actually reading the right words. They time them on and check them on pronunciation. They check them on whether they're pausing at commas and stopping a sentence where there's a full stop. And hopefully during that passage, they're making notes and getting all of that down. Now, typically when they do this, they have to leave the classroom. They typically would do it in the corridor because they don't want their student to be disturbed by all the other students in the class. And a lot of times the students don't actually like reading to their teachers. They find it a bit difficult and uncomfortable. So in August this year, we introduced something called Reading Progress. It's a free application that comes with Microsoft Office 365 and Teams. And this is what you can do with it. So you would basically, a student will be assigned a piece of work. It could be a PDF file, or it could just be a Word document. And she will be asked, or he will be asked, to record it. So they will record themselves reading a piece of text. And once they're finished with the video, they can play the video back and they can listen to themselves. If they're happy with it, etc., they can then post it back to their teacher. Now, what the teacher gets is there's artificial intelligence built into this tool. So the teacher gets all of this fantastic analysis. It will tell them that there was 41 correct words a minute. That's what their reading rate is. Their accuracy rate is 83%. It will tell them how many mispronounced words there are, where they've omitted words, any self-corrections they've made. And they provide all of this information back to the teacher on this particular student. They haven't had to leave the class. They haven't necessarily had to stand in front of the student and get the student then to repeat the text to them. And what's more, they get the data from all of the class, so they can start to see what typical words all of the class are getting wrong. So this is an amazing piece of technology that we've produced, which is free. And it really, really helps students, and it helps teachers save time because they don't have to go through one by one. They can just assign the work to the student, and as long as they have the technology, then they can actually do the work themselves, and the teacher gets all of the reporting. Now, looking ahead, we spoke to we have these innovative schools. We work with them, and we did some research with them, and basically it's not surprising. But these are the most innovative schools, by the way, but our most innovative schools are saying they're going to increase technology professional development by 77%. They've learned that they have to do that. They're going to make sure that they do more to try and help the students catch up. 77% of them said they would do that, of course, using technology. They're going to develop more methods and tools to get data back, get the information back. And they're going to continue with blended learning going on. So they're not just stopping it now that the students are back in the school. They're going to continue this. And one good example of this, perhaps for teachers, is there's this notion of flipped classrooms. And a flipped classroom is where you say to the students, go and do this assignment at home this evening, and then send it back to us once you've actually done the assignment. And then tomorrow in the lesson, rather than me marking it, we're going to talk through it, because the system had already done all of the marking. We can start talking about all of your responses, and the quality of teaching in that type of environment is far, far better than the traditional way that we're doing it today. And also 69% will pay more attention to developing social and emotional skills. And I think this social and emotional skills has been a big thing that's come out of the pandemic. More care, social care, I think, is really important, and we're going to have to develop more technology to support that going forward. Now, another area which I wanted to just focus on a little bit is curriculum. For myself, I don't really believe that continued investment in books is very worthwhile. They cost a lot of money. Typically, computers nowadays can cost between $250, $300 for an entry-level computer, which has a camera, sound, etc. You can do most things with it. And so you can have as much content as you like to be read on that computer. And this is a work we've been doing with the New Zealand government. We actually created an education services group because a lot of governments were saying they wanted us to work with them to actually redefine education for them, work with them on their digital transformation. And this is just one element of this, where we're actually creating this content hub. where we have all of the different curriculum pieces. Teachers can actually evaluate it and give it marks, just like if you went up and purchased a book online and wanted to get some feedback from others. And so you can actually go up here, you can then pull that content down into your learning management tool. And parents have access as well, by the way. So getting to the point I said earlier on, you can start participating. You actually get guidance on what your child is working on at this particular time, and you can access all of the curriculums. This is something we're working on right now. It's quite fresh and new, but we think digital content managed and packaged in a really easy way is the way of the future. So what's driving all of this? Why do I say new technology is going to be the big change? Well, powerful algorithms and compute power, that's just where technology is getting better and better. So let's discard that for a second. It's really cloud and artificial intelligence. We've seen already the artificial intelligence being used with the reading progress application. But big data is where you can now start collecting data and get immediate information about a student's learning, so you can intervene. I mean, typically teachers don't get that information back to maybe the end of a year, and by then it might be too late to intervene in a student's learning. We can actually deliver that information to them regularly, all the way through a student's learning progress. So we generally believe that, now that schools are returning, and generally in many places they are now all returning, it's not really an opportunity to extend learning beyond the classroom. We think it's an imperative to extend learning beyond the classroom. Let's not go back. Let's try to encourage all schools and teachers to continue using technology for the savings it gives you in time as a teacher, the added value it brings for the teaching and learning process for students. I agree that it doesn't, replace going to school and meeting your friends and having that sort of cohort of togetherness that you get within school, but it certainly enhances learning in many, many ways. So why do we think that this is really quite important? Well, we know that in the future, half of all paid work will be automated by machines. There is going to be a dramatic change in employability requirements for the workforce. And so getting students used to using technology for things like computational thinking, problem solving, collaboration with other students, all of this really is supported by technology. And it's really important for them to be using that. Certainly for the new jobs that are going to be created in the future, it's those types of 21st century skills that we really want them to learn and know. And then we know that there's 149 million new technology jobs by 2025. In fact, Satya Nadella, our CEO, says there probably isn't going to be a job, that there isn't going to be some requirement of technology, digital efficiency in that role. So you need to be proficient in using technology, comfortable with it, because it's actually going to be involved in all jobs going forward in the future. So Microsoft, our mission is to empower every student on the planet to achieve more. We work with governments and educational establishments throughout the world. My particular region is Europe, Middle East and Africa. And we look forward to working with all of you going forward to try to see if we can improve student learning outcomes. Thank you.